Story 1. Electric Avenue by Eddie Grant discusses the Brixton riots and the struggle of living in poverty, highlighting the challenges of not being able to provide for your children despite working full-time. Story 2. When I Lost You by Irving Berlin. Irving Berlin was 24 years old and experiencing early success. He married singer Dorothy Getz, who was in her early 20s. 5 months after the wedding, she died of typhoid fever. This was the first sad song he wrote. It took a year before he could bring himself to perform it. He did not marry again for 14 years. Story 3. I was around 13 years old when I came home from school, turned on Fuse TV, and they were playing music videos, which was their usual content back in 2004. I saw a video of a guy with long hair in a trippy video that ended with some cool animation. I got hooked on the song and the band. I later learned that the song is about how shortly after their first album, the lead singer was dating a fan, and they were having a baby together. She overdosed, killing both herself and the baby. The lead singer felt like he had absolutely nothing left because of that moment. Then, a month after their deaths, his dog escaped from the yard and was hit and killed by a car. The song expresses his longing for at least his dog's life back because it was all that he had left. Story 4. Save the Last Dance for Me was written by a groom in a wheelchair watching his new bride dance with their wedding guests. Story 5. The Drugs Don't Work by The Verve is about Richard Ashcroft's mother dying of cancer. Story 6. Glenn Campbell, I'm Not Gonna Miss You, a song to his wife while he has Alzheimer's, saying goodbye while he can because he knows he won't be able to say goodbye later. Ashley Campbell remembering a song from his daughter to him in response. Story 7. I have always loved The Show Must Go On, and still do. However, once Freddie Mercury revealed he was dying of AIDS, those words suddenly took on a heartbreaking meaning. Story 8. Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas. It was originally about a family planning to move but was written and recorded during World War II. Some of the lyrics were later changed. It originally included, "Someday soon we all will be together if the fates allow. Until then we'll have to muddle through somehow. So have yourself a merry little Christmas now." Story 9. Don't think this is unknown, but 3 a.m. by Matchbox 20 is about Rob Thomas's mom having cancer when he was younger. It really resonates with me, especially with my dad being sick now. It's probably one of my favorite songs ever. Story 10. Dancing in the Moonlight is one of my favorite songs. It has a very sad and unexpected origin. The songwriter and his girlfriend were on vacation at the beach when he was brutally beaten and his girlfriend was assaulted by gang members. He wrote the song afterwards, envisioning an idyllic world where everyone is happy and dances all the time. I feel terrible that this is my top comment of all time. I did not expect this kind of visibility. I just ruined so many people's days. Story 11. The song The Way by Fastball is about the tragic and mysterious disappearance of an elderly couple who were never seen alive again. Story 12. What a Catch by Fall Out Boy. It was years before I learned that Pete Wentz wrote it following his suicide attempt. Although it doesn't quite fit the question, it is really hard to listen to Chris Cornell's version of Nothing Compares to You Now. Story 13. Jeremy by Pearl Jam is inspired by the real-life suicide of Jeremy Waddell, a 15-year-old student from Richardson, Texas, who shot himself in front of his English class on January 8, 1991. Story 14. Limousine by Brand New is about the death of 7-year-old Katie Flynn, who was killed by a drunk driver. She was riding in a limousine with her family after a wedding where she served as the flower girl. Story 15. If You Could Read My Mind by Gordon Lightfoot is about a man falling out of love with his wife. He promised his daughter he would never sing it in concert. Story 16. Wake Me Up When September Ends. It's not just a meme. It's literally all Billy Joe Armstrong said after his dad died when he was a teenager. Story 17. I thought the song Wonder by Natalie Merchant was a whimsical piece about a remarkably gifted child. But it's actually about a child born with a rare congenital disease. The lyrics fit both interpretations. It's brilliant. Story 18. Pink Floyd's song is dedicated to their former bandmate Syd Barrett, who tragically lost his mental state. Shine On, You Crazy, Diamond, On June 5, 1975, Barrett, now heavy-set with a completely shaved head and eyebrows, wandered into the studio where the band was recording. They did not recognize him for some time due to his drastically changed appearance. When they eventually realized who the withdrawn man in the corner was, Roger Waters became so distressed by Barrett's appearance that he was reduced to tears. Story 19. I would dance pretty hard as a young child, not knowing anything about the lyrics of Semi-Charmed Life. It must have been funny to adults. Story 20. The song Father of Mine by Everclear resonates with my experiences growing up. My father had a troubled past, often drinking and being abusive towards my mother. He would come to my house with a birthday card containing $5 and then leave. He struggled with his own demons, suffering from schizophrenia, and even attempted to take his own life in front of me. This background has had a profound impact on me. Story 21. My Darling, Clementine is about a man who watches his lover drown in a river because he cannot swim. The final verse goes, Ruby lips above the water blowing bubbles sweet and fine. Alas for me, I was no swimmer, so I lost my Clementine. Story 22. That Year by Brandi Carlile is a bit of a cheat on my part because I attended the same school as the person mentioned alongside Brandi when it happened. He was one of her best friends, and I knew him in a casual manner. When she released the song, I was absolutely floored by how much strength she showed in approaching the what-ifs. It's a heartbreaking song about such a gentle soul. Brandi treated it with a delicate hand. Beautifully written song, Brandi. Rest in peace. Story 23. Bruce Springsteen, Born in the USA. I thought it was a happy song about being born in the USA, I guess. And of course, it's not. The song addresses the economic hardships of Vietnam veterans upon their return home, juxtaposed ironically against the patriotic glorification of the nation's fighting forces. Yeah, it is not a happy song. Story 24. Sitting on the Dock of the Bay by Otis Redding. The final verse, where he whistles the melody, was a placeholder. He died before he could record the lyrics to the end of the song. He had an incredible voice. Story 25. I Wish It Would Rain by The Temptations. The lyrics of this mournful song about a heartbroken man whose woman has just left him were written by Motown staff writer Roger Penzabene. The lyricist had just learned that his wife was unfaithful, and in his sorrow and pain, Penzabene wrote both this song and its follow-up, I Could Never Love Another, After Loving You. Tragically, the distraught Penzabene took his own life barely a week after the single's release. Story 26. Gone Away is a favorite song by The Offspring, but it can be difficult to listen to after reading about it. I cannot imagine performing it. Story 27. Zombie by The Cranberries addresses a bombing that resulted in the deaths of children during the conflict known as the Troubles. I can't believe that situation still exists. Story 28. The Show Must Go On by Queen features a powerful refrain where the singer proclaims, I'll face it with a grin. I'm never giving in. On with the show. Freddie Mercury was facing the challenges of AIDS, though only those closest to him were aware of his condition. The lyrics are not subtle, and given the context of Mercury's illness, they hold deeper meaning. It is remarkable that he managed to record such an impactful song despite his declining health. Story 29. Time in a Bottle by Jim Croce explores the theme of not having enough time to spend with loved ones. Shortly after making plans to wind down his career to be a father to his newborn child, he tragically died in a plane crash. Story 30. On December 17, 2012, by The Decemberists. I don't usually pay attention to titles, so I didn't realize until my husband pointed it out to me. The song is about Sandy Hook. Story 31. Okay. It's not heartbreaking, but definitely more serious than I ever thought. The dogs in Who Let the Dogs Out represent men who harass women in clubs. The song essentially asks, who let in these individuals who don't know how to act? Story 32. There's a song by the Spanish group Mecano titled Cruz y Navaja. It tells the story of a young bartender in Madrid who, while trying to make ends meet, works as much as he can. He returns home to his wife, who longs for intimacy. Exhausted, he consistently turns her down. One morning, He walks home and catches sight of a couple being affectionate. As he approaches, he realizes it is his wife. In a moment of anger and shock, he confronts the couple and is further stunned to see his wife kissing another woman. Just as he is about to separate them, his wife's lover pulls out a knife and fatally stabs him. The group confirmed that the story is based on real events taken from police reports, with only the names changed for the song. Story 33, Sex Type Thing by Stone Temple Pilots. For the longest time, based on what lyrics I could understand, it seemed like a darkly sexy song about two people giving in to their desires. A little messed up, but both people involved are willing participants. However, Weiland was writing about a girl being gang raped, and it was written from the perspective of the rapist. It's not pro-rape, but it aims to illustrate how distorted a rapist's point of view is. I always found the song kind of appealing, but once I learned the story and some of the lyrics I never actually heard clearly, it became a ruined song for me. Story 34, Fitz Pleasure by Alt J is a groovy and entertaining song, but it is inspired by a controversial novel, Last Exit to Brooklyn. The lyrics mention Tralala, the name of a prostitute in the book, and broom-shaped pleasure, which refers to the violent gang rape of Tralala involving a broom. Story 35, House of the Rising Sun. Most people know it from the Animals version, sung by a man. However, it is written from the perspective of a young woman forced into prostitution in the House of the Rising Sun. It has been the ruin of many poor girls, and I know I am one. Story 36, Wake Me Up When September Ends by Green Day. Seeing the music video as a child, I thought it was about the Iraq War. It wasn't until much later that I discovered it was about Billy's father. He died in September, and on the day of his funeral, Billy locked himself in his room. When his mother came to get him out, he yelled, "Wake me up when September ends." Story 37, Take Me to Church by Hozier. On first listen, it sounds like a love song. The music video includes more visual details. Story 38, Fiddler Green by the Tragically Hip was written by Gord Downey after his 5-year-old nephew died of a heart condition. The song aimed to help his sister cope with the pain of releasing her little boy into the afterlife. Montreal, also by the Tragically Hip, addresses the massacre at the École Polytechnique in Montreal on December 6, 1989. I am old enough to remember the news coverage of the event. The line, "Don't you worry, her mother's gonna make her look good," refers to a mother trying to make her murdered daughter look decent for her funeral. It is heartbreaking. Story 39. It's not exactly tragic, but The Wedding Staple at Last by Etta James is actually about a widow who dies and meets her late husband in the afterlife. My heart was wrapped up in clover the night I looked at you, because she was buried. It's still a great love story that can be used for weddings, though it has a touch of darkness. Story 40. Recently, I found out that Stevie wrote it when her childhood friend was dying of leukemia. I have incurable leukemia, so the lyrics resonate more deeply for me. Faces freedom with a little fear. I have no fear and have only love. Story 41. Brick by Ben Folds 5. I thought it was a catchy tune until a friend told me to really listen to the lyrics. Story 42. Tears in Heaven by Eric Clapton deeply resonates with me. I learned that he wrote it after his 4-year-old son tragically passed away, and it has affected me differently ever since. Story 43. Me and a Gun by Tori Amos addresses her experience of being raped earlier in life. Writing this song was one way she chose to cope with the trauma. Story 44. Love Will Tear Us Apart by Joy Division. Ian Curtis was sharing his experiences, but no one recognized his struggles until it was too late. Story 45. Sarah by Stevie Nicks. Don Henley claimed it was about a child he conceived with Nicks, whom she wanted to name Sarah. I don't remember if it was a miscarriage or a termination, but no child was born, and the lyrics expressed the loss. Story 46. Of Monsters and Men have a song called Little Talks, which is about a grieving wife speaking to her deceased husband as her sanity slips. King and Lionheart is another song. The story behind it is that the singer Nana was forced to separate from her brother when her father left for Canada and took her brother with him, leaving their mother and Nana behind. Story 47. I just started listening to a podcast called 60 Songs That Explain the 90s, and Hey Jealousy is much sadder now than it already was. Story 48. Don't Fear the Reaper by Blue Oyster Cult. All these decades, I didn't realize it was about committing suicide. Story 49. Possession by Sarah McLachlan is inspired in part by troubling lyrics sent to her by a stalker who ultimately took his own life. Story 50. My favorites are songs that sound happy but aren't when you look at the lyrics. Semi-Charmed Life by Third Eye Blind sounds like a happy song, but it's actually about how a drug user feels when he is high while lamenting that nothing else can make him feel that way. Hey Yeah by Outkast is about falling out of love with someone, but no one around you wants to hear about it. Breakfast at Tiffany's by Deep Blue Something is about grasping at straws to find any reason not to break up when you know the relationship isn't working. Story 51. Luca by Suzanne Vega is a song about physical and mental abuse by her stepfather. Another song addressing similar themes is Hell is for Children by Pat Benatar. Story 52. Blackbird by the Beatles is often said to be a tribute to the Little Rock Nine. Story 53. Most, if not all, Linkin Park songs resonate deeply. Every lyric became too real starting in 2017. Fly High Chester. Rest in Peace. Story 54. Youth of the Nation. Listening to it as a kid, you think this is great. Listening as an adult, Johnny Boy always played the fool. He broke the rules so you would think he was cool. He was never. Story 55. Fastball's The Way was on every top 40 and alternative rock station when I was a kid. Fastball frontman Tony Scalzo came up with the idea for the song after reading articles that described the June 1997 disappearance of an elderly married couple, Lela and Raymond Howard, from Salado, Texas. They left home to attend the Pioneer Day Festival at nearby Temple, Texas, despite Lela's Alzheimer's and Raymond recently recovering from brain surgery. They were discovered 2 weeks later, dead at the bottom of a ravine near Hot Springs, Arkansas, hundreds of miles off their intended route. The authorities who investigated the incident believed that Lela, who was driving the car, was trying to locate a place where she had once vacationed. Story 56. Year of the Cat by Al Stewart is about the suicide of a comedian, but you would never know that just from the lyrics. Al has been quite clear about the meaning in interviews. Story 57. Not necessarily tragic, but What's My Age Again? By Blink-182 is a sad song when you consider that it addresses the theme of people leaving you when you struggle to recognize the need to grow up. Many tend to overlook this aspect since it is an upbeat song complemented by a famous video depicting the band running nude through the streets of Los Angeles. Story 58. For me, it's Blue Velvet by Bobby Vinton. It was my mom's favorite song. She said it reminded her of a blue velvet dress she had in high school. I came home from having dinner with friends one night and found her deceased from an aneurysm on her bedroom floor. But when she left, gone was the glow of blue velvet. In my heart, there will always be a precious and warm memory through the years. I can still see blue velvet through my tears. Story 59. Back to Black by Amy Winehouse. I had never really listened to her before, but I came across a video of one of her performances in which she was clearly struggling mentally. This made me dive into her life, and it was heartbreaking to see how she continued performing despite her struggles, without help from anyone. Knowing her past and hearing the song after that really hits me. Story 60. Did you know that the song is about Dr. Martin Luther King? Listen to it again. Early morning, April 4th, a shot rings out in the Memphis sky. Free at last, they took your life. They could not take your pride. Story 61. He stopped loving her today. It took me 30 years to finally pay attention to the powerful lyrics. Story 62. Vera Lynn's We'll Meet Again is inherently sentimental, but it became synonymous with World War II and the reality that many people would not see their friends and loved ones before the war ended. It is implied that some sunny day will not be a homecoming, but rather a reunion in the afterlife. Story 63. Sweet Caroline. I thought it was a nice little love song about a guy's girlfriend, not about an 11-year-old girl. Kills me how normalized it is. Story 64. Did you ever sing Ring Around the Rosie as a child? It is about the bubonic plague and everyone dies at the end of the song. Story 65. Candle in the Wind reflects on the death of Marilyn Monroe. Smoke on the Water describes a concert venue being burned down. Although no one died, it was still frightening. American Pie 4 references Buddy Holly, who died in a plane crash. Story 66. Singer and guitarist Elvin Bishop met a woman, wrote the song Fooled Around and fell in love about her, and had a baby. Years later, the mother and daughter were brutally murdered by a small cult. His daughter was dating one of the suspects. This realization gives the song a much sadder meaning. Story 67. Everything I Own by the band Bread. Although initial listeners may have interpreted it as a song about a broken relationship, David Gates revealed that it was written in memory of his father who died in 1963 before he achieved his success with Bread. According to the book 1000 UK No. 1 Hits by John Kuttner and Spencer Lee, at his father's funeral, a friend took David Gates aside and said, "Your dad was so proud of what you were doing." David agreed. "My success would have been so special to him as he was my greatest influence. So I decided to write and record Everything I Own about him. If you listen to the words, you sheltered me from harm, kept me warm, you gave my life to me, set me free. It says it all." As for the title, Gates said that he once sent his mother an orchid for her birthday at a time when he could barely afford it. She was so touched. "My dad wrote to tell me I could have had anything she owned in return." Typically, Gates wrote the lyrics after the music. Although the lyrics were written so it could be interpreted as a love song, Gates said, "When I played it for my wife, she knew right away that it was about my father. She cried." Story 68. Hazard by Richard Marx. It just sounded like a cool song until I read the lyrics one day. I'm not sure about the context, to be honest, but it shattered my heart. The way the song is sung is tragically beautiful. Story 69. Death of a Martian by Red Hot Chili Peppers. Anthony wrote it for Flea and his dog, Martian, who passed away. I believe Martian was a band dog, present during the recording of many songs. Story 70. While touring with the Beach Boys in 1975, Henry Gross visited Brian Wilson's home in Los Angeles. During their conversation, Gross mentioned that he had an Irish setter named Shannon. Wilson responded that he too had a dog named Shannon that had recently been killed in an accident with a car. Story 71. Today by the Smashing Pumpkins. I always performed vocals on Rock Band, and the first time I sang along, I realized it was about planning a suicide and the happiness you feel when that day finally arrives. After endless feelings of struggle and despair, today is the greatest day because it will all be over. The only other thing by the Smashing Pumpkins that stayed with me for years was a humorous clip of someone going down a roller coaster, perfectly timed with a portion of 1979, where it goes, "We." Story 72. Dancing in the Moonlight. Sherman Kelly wrote the song in 1969. While recovering from a vicious assault by a gang, he envisioned an alternate reality, the dream of a peaceful and joyful celebration of life. Kelly wrote, "On a trip to St. Croix in 1969, I was the first victim of a violent gang that eventually murdered 8 American tourists. At that time, I suffered multiple facial fractures and wounds and was left for dead. While I was recovering, I wrote Dancing in the Moonlight, in which I envisioned an alternate reality, the dream of a peaceful and joyful celebration of life." The song became a huge hit and was recorded by many musicians worldwide. Dancing in the Moonlight continues to be popular to this day. Story 73. I Don't Like Mondays by the Boomtown Rats. I heard the song a few years ago and recently learned the backstory. It's about the Cleveland school shooting from 1979. When the shooter was asked why she did it, she simply said that she didn't like Mondays. Story 74. Edge of Glory by Lady Gaga is about her grandfather's death and saying goodbye to him in the hospital with her grandmother. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.